Hi, everybody. This is Michael Makowski. I'm the president and CEO of GINSA. I'm here with Coach Bruce Pearl of Auburn, and we're really honored to have him. Uh, he's I don't think to those of you he really needs much of an introduction, but he's obviously one of the leading coaches in college basketball. Went to the Final Four this past season, and now GINSA is not a sports organization, even though a lot of us like sports. But the reason why we have Coach Pearl is because he's such a prominent figure nationally, and he's really been outspoken about anti-Semitism and Israel, and it's gotten and his comments have really kind of gotten a lot of attention. So we wanted to we reached out to him, and he kindly agreed to speak to us about it. So, Coach Pearl, it's terrific to have you. We're honored to have you.
Well, Michael, it's great to be with you. Many of you all that are on the call have been in this work for a long, long time. And I'm glad to be helping join. It's nice to know that we're not alone. It's an interesting that we picked this particular day when Israel right now is in an active war with Iran. Probably for the first time since 1979, when things changed there. This has been obviously something that's been in the making for a long, long time, and for maybe the second or third time in this conflict, we are finally taking the war to them, and so just praying for everybody, praying for Jerusalem, praying for Israel, praying for the soldiers, both from the state of Israel as well as the United States, and praying for the people of Iran.
Thanks. Yeah, you're right about the people of Iran because they can't really be free. They can't be free as long as this regime stays in power. And for those of you who know, this is actually our second webinar today. We don't usually do this. We had a webinar this morning at 9 o'clock Eastern time with 3 Israeli retired generals that are involved with us and my colleague John Hanna, and we talked about the war, and we're going to be having other such webinars starting next week. But I appreciate it. So let's pick up on that. You're right. It's an historic day, and so far the initial phase is very, very positive. But I think Iran is about to conduct a retaliation against Israel tonight, Israel time. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, everyone will be safe in Israel. Okay, Coach Pearl, let me ask you. And maybe offline we could talk about my jump shot later on because it's not as good as it used to be. But you could help me on that. But I wanted I really think I'd like to. I think it's good for the audience to get to know you a little bit first. And maybe you could just talk about a little bit of your background and how come Israel and Judaism also became important to you.
Well, thanks, Michael. So people ask me why I do it all the time, and sometimes they think it's political. And as we all know, it's not political; it's survival. I was born in 1960 in Boston, Massachusetts, just 15 years after the gates opened up and we recognized that 6 million of our brothers and sisters were murdered because of how they prayed. And so I was young enough to feel it, live it. Family were Holocaust survivors and family that perished in the Holocaust. Grew up in an incredibly ethnic town of Boston, great neighborhoods of food and culture, but tremendous division, racial division. There was the Irish South Boston, the Italian North End, the ghettos of Dorchester and Mattapan and Blue Hill Avenue. For any of these Boston Jews, they know exactly what I'm talking about, the African-American community in Roxbury. And so as a kid, I just grew up seeing all that division. And I didn't understand it because I was an athlete. You go in the playground, it doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter how you pray. Can you play defense? And when you pass me the ball, and are we going to be good enough to stay on the court? And we didn't see it. But our parents sure saw it, and our grandparents sure saw it. And for those of you that are my age or older, I'm 65. You remember what it's like getting off the bus maybe and going to a friend's house or a teammate's house or a schoolmate's house to do some homework or play some ball, and the parents would take the kid in the other room and go, of all the kids in school, you got to bring this guy home, meaning this guy being Jewish, or a girl that you might be trying to date. And the parents said, no, this isn't happening. So I became aware that somehow being Jewish was somehow being different. And that really bothered me, because as a basketball coach, which was always something that was in me, I was about bringing people together, not finding ways to separate us. And then as I grew in my religious faith, as I grew in my Jewish faith, and I also was in a Christian or Catholic world in Boston as an athlete, man, all it was finding ways that would make us different. Jesus was a huge separator, because after all, we killed Christ, and I was blamed for it. I had to fight oftentimes because my people killed their God. And I'm just like blown. This is just not working out for me. I don't get it. And then when I get a little older and I sort of study my faith a little bit more, and I study the Christian faith a little bit more, and I find out that this Jesus guy was actually Jewish his whole life, like that he was born in Israel and Bethlehem, and, kind of grew up in the Galilee. And I'm going like, doesn't that sort of connect us? I don't get it. And so you asked me about my background. My background was that, trying to bring people together. But the Jewish background was my grandfather emigrated from Ternopil in 1929 at 11 years old with his 3 younger siblings. He was Orthodox. He was a plumber. And my goal in life was to try to get to 13 and get bar mitzvah so I could go rap tefillin with him in the mornings for the morning prayer. And my papa went to the temple with work boots and greasy, dirty clothes. And he was surrounded guys in suits and ties. And he was accepted because he was not that he was a smart man, but he was a hardworking man who loved his country, who loved his faith, who loved his grandson. And I felt very comfortable in that environment. So thank God I had a great foundation. Yiddish was the language that was spoken in our home. English was a second language. And so I got it. I was born with it. And so I've lived it for the rest of my life. Hey, Michael, I'm just not hearing you.
Sorry, I had
Okay.
muted it. I'm sorry. I apologize, everyone. I wanted to ask you about your encounter with Israel. I think that was at an early age. Is that right?
I wish it was earlier, but I'm gonna tell you about my first encounter. So my goal was I never went on birthright, because my goal was to graduate from college and go join the Army and go join the IDF. That was what my goal was. But when I was a senior in college, my head basketball coach at Boston College took the Stanford job, and he asked me to go with him. And so my plans got upset, and I never did go to Israel when I was 22 years old. And I didn't get there until 2009, when I coached the USA Maccabi team in Israel. Danny Grunfeld, Ernie's son, was my best player. My son, Steven, who's my associate head coach, was one of my really good players. And Todd Golden, the head coach of the Florida Gators, this year's national champion, was my point guard. So we went over to Israel, and we got a chance to play Israel for the gold medal. Thank God Israel doesn't lose very often at home. We appreciate that, but they lost this time in overtime to the United States team. And it was a great memory.
Was it I think I thought I saw you said something about the 6-day war left an impression on you. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Michael. So my papa, going back to my papa, who I love dearly, he worked really hard. He left the house before anybody ever got up, and he'd come home for dinner, and then after dinner he'd go to sleep. I never saw him watching television. One night, I actually think it was a Shabbat night, and he's watching TV, which he would never watch TV on Shabbat. But anyways, he was watching TV, and I was like, and he was crying. I'm like, Papa, why are you watching TV? Why are you awake? Like none of this was supposed to happen. Calls me over, says, come here, sit down. Puts me on his lap, and he tells me about Israel. Of course, as you would imagine, 1967, it was the 6-day war. And Papa would not go to sleep because he was afraid that when he woke up, Israel wouldn't be there. And he explained to me that when his family fled the pogroms in Ternopil, they really felt at the time they only had one option. That was go to the United States. Had Israel been a state, maybe it was born a little sooner, they might have gone to Israel. Maybe more of his family would have survived. But he made me then have an understanding that the fact that the United States of America saved our family from certain death and destruction and so on and so forth. But he also taught me about the importance of having a safe place. If we could all recall, our grandparents and even our parents, they were scared. They were a little frightened by the world because they lived through what the world had done to them. That's one of the problems with our young people today, our young Jewish Americans. They've not lived it. They've not seen it. Okay, they're experiencing some anti-Semitism right now. It's awful. I get it. But our parents went through the fact that they weren't sure they're going to be alive just one lifetime ago. And so that experience right there, and my papa sort of made me always pledge. You know, he told me what, you know, I understood what the difference between being Jewish was, and not the difference was, but in addition to being a Zionist, and that's what it started for me.
Oh, so let me ask you, let's bring it today, because look, since October 7th, you've become outspoken in support of Israel and support of the hostages. I think during the Final Four, you said something from around that time about the hostages. Maybe you could say what you said
Yep.
and why.
Well, you know, Michael, I've been doing it for a long time, way
Okay.
before October 7th. But the last in 2 out of the last 6 years, my team's gotten to the Final Four, so I got a lot more followers now than I used to have.
I see.
And so, but let me tell you an interesting story. I think everybody will appreciate this. So, I'm going to equate this, what happened to me the day we won the Sweet 16, to something that's very Jewish, and that is this. I know at a wedding, we break the glass, and the symbolisms that go places. Look, a wedding, in your most joyous occasion, your happiest occasion, we're reminded about how fragile a marriage can be. We're reminded about the destruction of the Second Temple. It is so Jewish that we celebrate, but we also, you know who's miserable. You know, it's and so here's what happens to me. We beat Creighton this year in Lexington, Kentucky. I'm skipping down the halls of Rupp Arena with my 3 players, kind of like Dorothy going down the Yellow Brick Road, and we're on our way to the Sweet 16. We're going to Atlanta, and we really think we got a chance to maybe get to the Final Four. We just beat a great team, and I'm thanking God as I'm walking with my players. And I'm like, God, what have I done to deserve this? This is incredible. Thank you so much for the blessing. And boom, the shattered glass enters in my mind, and I go, you know what? Mordechai, which is my Hebrew name, and the obviously story of Purim and Esther, and Mordechai speaking up to Esther. He says, remember who you are. I'm glad that you're happy, but not all of our people are happy. And he put Idan Alexander's name into my heart and into my head. And it sort of reminded me of that wedding. In my most joyous moment, I was thinking about the hostages held in Gaza. And so I said to my players before the press conference, hey guys, listen, you guys know, you know me. This just came to me. And I was saying, God just spoke this to me. You know, we got a hostage still alive, held in Gaza, and Tahad Pettiford, who was one of my best players to coach, the kid's from Jersey. I'm like, yeah, because Tahad's from Jersey City. I said, Tahad, he is. I said, would you guys mind if I started the press conference off and just sort of reminded, while we're happy in our joyous moment, we still have America still held hostage. And they're like, Coach, you got to do it. Go ahead, do it. Coach, do it. We want you to do it. And so it was our way of doing it. And then the next, not realizing what kind of an impact it would have, I heard from Idan's father, Adi, the very next day, and he thanked me for doing it. He reached me on WhatsApp or whatever. I called him and I said, what are you doing this weekend? He says, I'm not doing anything. I said, well, you're coming to Atlanta, you and your son, Roy, and you're going to be my guest at our game against Michigan. And not only that, I want you to speak to the team. And so Adi comes, we have dinner the night before, and he speaks to the team the day of the game. And could you imagine his message? Because he was talking to boys Idan's age, 19-year-old boys that are playing 19, 20, you know what I'm saying? And he spoke to them about what it was like to be a father going through this right now. And guys, take advantage of this opportunity, because you may find yourself someday in the dungeons of Gaza. You're not right now. Take advantage of this. And it was just beautiful and sweet. So
Oh,
That was why I spoke up at the NCAA tournament.
wow. And your players, it sounds like, are very supportive of this. They don't see it as interference or what stuff. Is that right?
But who's teaching our kids patriotism? Who's teaching our kids the truth? In other words, an issue with the national anthem. You know, the NBA years ago, they were all kneeling, and I get why they were kneeling, because they want to point out the racial intolerance sometimes, and sometimes sometimes the targeting of an African American. They walk into a store, they get enough money to buy anything in the store, but they get followed by the security guard because they're black, driving while black. All the different things that we face in anti-Semitism, they face in racism. So I get it. But I don't want to do it by disrespecting the flag or disrespecting the flag. They have a right to kneel. This country gives them that right to kneel. I bring soldiers in every year that say, you know what, guys, I've given my life so you would have the right to kneel. But if you did, it would break my heart, because I love Auburn basketball. And so you got to teach them patriotism. So I got to teach them the truth about certain things. And so obviously they know I'm a Jewish. They know I'm on social media. And so we talk about things. We talk about lots of things. I listen to them. They listen to me. And they have a greater understanding. Plus, I take my team to Israel every 4 years. And so they got a little bit of an understanding.
Really? Why do you take them?
Well, there's an organization called Athletes for Israel. Daniel Posner is somebody that kind of runs that. I'm on his board. And anybody like to hear more about what we do, just give me a shout. But we took Kansas and Arizona and Kansas State to Israel and to Abu Dhabi in celebration of Abraham Accords a couple of years ago. I took my Auburn team. And so we take athletes to Israel. And so it was a great experience. It was just a great experience because for me, Jerusalem should bind us and connect us. It should not divide us. And unfortunately, sometimes it does.
So, Jinsa, we take active duty U.S. military officers to Israel, and we also take retired U.S. generals and admirals to Israel. In fact, we're supposed to take a really terrific group of senior retired U.S. generals and admirals in about a little over a week. We'll see if the war permits us to come. Anyhow, how has your university been about your comments and these kind of things?
Well, first of all, let me thank Jinsa for what you guys do, because as you know, when you go to Israel and you ask them, what can we do? We want to do more. We want to help. They say the same thing every time. Come back. Yeah. And in fact, bring somebody else so that people can see it for themselves. And that's what I do. Look, as a coach, I'm trying to bring people together. So once again, if I've got Christians, we're going to take them to the Sea of Galilee, and they're going to be baptized near where Jesus was baptized. We're going to make the connection of the faith. And they're also going to go to the Holocaust Museum. They're going to pray at the Western Wall. We're going to take them to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. We're going to take them to Mount Moriah and show them where Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac. But at the same time, there's a mosque sitting up there right now. And so, again, finding a way to, make obviously the connections. The university has been pretty good. I do live in the evangelical South. It's a place that is incredibly misunderstood when it comes to where the Jew. Everybody thinks that, when they think of anti-Semitism, they think of the old right, the old Ku Klux Klan and all that stuff. And sure, that absolutely was present. There's very, very, very little. I've not seen any of it in the 11, 12 years that I've been in Auburn, Alabama. And my evangelical Christian friends wouldn't have it. We're not burning flags in Auburn, whether it's a flag of Israel or the flag of the United States of America. That's just not happening in Alabama. And so the university, for example, I've got an Under Armour shirt on. It doesn't say Auburn. What they've asked me to do is they've allowed me to speak as Bruce Pearl. They've even allowed me to speak as Coach Bruce Pearl. But if you look at my social media, it doesn't say anything about Auburn. And they've done that in such a way to protect me from faculty or protect me from the media who want to say, look, you can't do this as a public employee, separation of church and state, when the bottom line was it was really about separating the state from the church rather than the other way around. That's extremely misunderstood. And so there's been ways to go around it. The other thing is, I've won 5 SEC championships in 8 years. What are they gonna do? Fire me? I mean, you know, I mean, they're not gonna fire me right now. So, and I tell young Jewish coaches who are like, man, I wish I had the courage to do what you're doing. And I went, guys, you're a young coach, you got a young family. You need to be a mensch. You need to be the best. You need to be the best that you could possibly be. And you need to be that light. Let that light shine upon you. And don't be afraid to wear your chai on the outside. But you got to feed your families. And so there are some universities and there are some places where those guys would lose their job if they did what I'm doing. So don't think I'm so courageous. Don't think I'm so special. Yes, I absolutely would give Auburn and its leadership credit that I have the freedom to be able to speak out. Not to mention the fact that I'm just speaking the truth.
Yeah. 3 out of the 4 coaches of the Final Four were Jewish, right? I assume that was unprecedented. I don't know if the other 2 coaches, because again, I apologize, I don't follow college basketball, but were the other 2 coaches as outspoken in favor of Israel as you are?
They are absolutely both in favor of Israel, like I am. Both of them actually played professional basketball in Israel.
One's Israeli, right? Or is that right?
Well, Todd Golden, he had to get over there to get a passport in a certain way. So I guess he still holds a little dual citizenship.
Okay.
But Todd Golden at Florida and John Shire at Duke, and they're both younger than I am, and so is everybody in coaching. And they're also, at places that aren't, especially John at Duke, and so they do not hide behind. They're not closet Jews by any stretch of the imagination, but there really probably isn't anybody in coaching that is out there necessarily as I am, because I just feel like I'm really upset because what's going on in these college campuses, I actually don't blame some of these kids as much as I blame our educational leaders. Look, right now, our university is going to start teaching anything different about Middle Eastern studies. Are they going to start teaching more about the birth and state of Israel? Are they going to teach the truth about Zionism? Are they willing to teach the truth about apartheid? Apartheid. There were 160,000 Arabs living in that land in 1948. There are now 6 million. If the Jews or Israel was in some sort of a genocide, they've done a really shitty job because it doesn't make any sense. Or if it's an apartheid state specifically, there are 2 million Israeli Arabs that are, and many of them most of them are living a great, great life. There just so happens to be about 2 million Arabs in Gaza and about 2 million Arabs in the Judea and Samaria, 4 million roughly Palestinians, non-Israeli citizens, and a good portion of them have been educated, indoctrinated, and lived a certain oppressed life by their leadership, the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, Hamas, where they want to kill the Jews. And they're not interested in living in a state next to the Jewish state. They want their own state. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. That's free of all the Jews. And guess what? We're not having it. And if anybody was wondering, whether or not this was a real problem, those of you on this call, I'm sure most of you were. I did not need a wake-up call on October 7th. I didn't. But American Jewry did. And what breaks my heart is that on October 8th, so many people around the world began to sort of support Hamas. 45 Americans died on that day. And yet we've got Americans on college campuses supporting Hamas because you know why? They infiltrated our schools. They infiltrated our educational systems. They got into our Ivy League universities and began to dominate. Michael, do I understand that you went to Harvard at one time?
Yeah, I have a PhD from there. Yeah.
All right, well, great. I grew up in Boston. You would have had to multiply my GPA times 2. I would have had 1,000 to my SAT to even come close. I applied to Harvard. They laughed at me. Back in the day when I was growing up, the best businessmen, the best lawyers, the best doctors, the best minds in the world went to Harvard. And you know what? There was a pretty good Jewish population when you were back there, I bet.
That's right. I think it's about a little over 20 years ago. And there probably was around 20% Jewish, I think. Yeah.
Now it's less than 5.
Yeah.
Okay. No. And listen, that's a problem And so whether it's a problem that's going to be addressed through immigration, whether it's going to be a problem that's addressed through what they're doing with these student visas, we've got a serious problem. And our problem is, unfortunately, guys, going to get worse before it gets better. It's going to get worse before it gets better. With what Israel's doing right now, right now, I just saw a poll this morning, only 35% of Democrats polled were in support of what Israel's doing right now. The rest of them were against it. I mean, and for me, the only way that we get through this is if we start teaching the truth.
Yeah. No, I actually, if I may, I think what the Trump administration is doing to address anti-Semitism, maybe some things are going too far, but I think it's great with these universities because they are rotten. The culture there is just so rotten. And it's going to take a while to try to change those places, but they need to pay a price for all the anti-Semitism that's been going on. When I was there, I didn't see any anti-Semitism. You could wear a yarmulke, no problem. But what's changed since then? It's just awful what's happened to these universities. And there's such I'm sorry, it's about you, not me, but I'll just say this one story always sticks in my head. I spoke in LA at a big synagogue last year, and the rabbi, it's actually Rabbi Wolpe's synagogue, who became known with Harvard. He said, "Oh, he introduced me and he mentioned that I went to Harvard for my PhD." And then he said, when Harvard was Harvard, and everyone laughs. Harvard's become a national or international joke. And I'm not sure they fully realize how they destroyed their brand. But anyway, sorry for that rant, but that's how I look at it. But it's good that you're in a much better environment. I think I'm from St. Louis. I think the Midwest is a little different than the East, and the South seems also a little different. And it seems like places that don't burn the American flag tend not to be as anti-Semitic either. So that's
Michael, I talked to Ron Dermer last week, and amazing that I was able to get a hold of him, as busy as he is right now, kind of helping Bibi run Israel. And he
was a fellow with us.
What's that now?
He was a Ginza fellow, by the way, for a year and a half, in between his stints as ambassador and minister, by the way. So
he's a tremendous man, smart man.
Yeah, and he's a big sports fan, American sports
fan. That's probably why he answered my call. He's pissed off at me that we didn't win the national championship. I called him like before, like when we were getting on the way to when we didn't have to tournament. I said, Ron, what I want to do more. What could I do to help? I want to do more. He says, you know what? Win the national championship and raise your platform. Okay, that's how you can do more. Don't quit your day job, right?
Yeah.
But he said something to your point, Michael. He said, if America would focus a little bit on teaching their kids to love America, and stop with teaching our kids what a horrible place it was, and all the things that are wrong with it, and all the inequities, and all the racism, and all this awful stuff, and if they would teach them to love their country more like they used to, the people that love their country love Israel. Your patriots in this country have no problem with Israel as an ally.
Right.
The people that don't love this country are the same people that are the most anti-Semitic.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Well, look, I know we've taken up your time. We've run out of time. Do you have any final thoughts? When I say final, I almost said final four, but when you have any final thoughts, Coach?
No.
I have to ask you one last question. Oh, wait, I told myself I asked you. I'm in Washington, so I'm obligated to ask you. Now, I met Senator Tuberville, and he's also a coach, right? He's a former coach, and he likes to be called coach, not senator. Now, my understanding is, and I don't know anything about Alabama politics, but my understanding is he wants to run for governor, and some people are saying that you might want to run or be appointed senator. I don't know. You want to address that in one way or another? I got to ask you that before we get off. I'm sorry.
Well, there may be some people that would like me to run for senator. I do love my country, and I am grateful to this country, and I do want to see this country do well. I want to see Alabama do well, but I love Auburn, and I do love coaching basketball. This place has been unbelievable to me and to my family. So, so that is my answer. I am
All
Auburn's
right.
basketball. I am Auburn's basketball coach and War Damn Eagle.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. Well, look, Coach, I want to thank you very much. I wish you tremendous success in coaching, but most importantly for us, I'd say just keep speaking up like you do. And Ron's right, of course. You know, the higher the profile you have, the higher the platform, the more influence you have. But I want to thank you, and I know I speak for everybody on this call and my whole organization. And I want to thank my first of all, I want to thank my board member Charles Wax for help arranging
Yeah,
this.
Charles
Yeah,
was the one that got this set up, man.
yeah. So I know
All
he's been
Charles
telling
had
me.
to do was ask me one time. We've been trying to
Okay,
do this for a while, so
that's great. He's a
a great
tremendous
man.
guy. But but on behalf of the organization, and I'm sure for everybody in the audience, I want to thank you very much for everything you do and you say. It's very important. A lot of people listen to you. You have a terrific platform, and I just want to say thank you very much and chazak v'amatz, and keep doing well.
Well, you guys keep up the good work, and Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat
and
shalom.
Chag Sameach, and pray for Jerusalem.
All right, amen. Take care.
Okay,
Great to
take
talk to
care.
you. Thank you, Coach. Bye.